Beyond the Ghostlight.
Oh.
We're back, y'all!
Hi. Hey, everybody. Happy summer.
Happy summer!
Yeah, it's a nice, warm, dry day, Lovely.
Right.
Wonderful, Marshy Day. Oh, yeah. It is
Yeah.
also a very special day, I believe, everybody. I have to say it's our anniversary, but
I know. Wow, this is what, the 13th episode? Yeah.
I didn't
Hooray!
even
We've been doing it for a whole year.
Lucky 13. I did not even think about that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Magical.
That's amazing, and it's been a lot of fun just being able to talk with you lovelies and talk with some of our local creatives, the people who are making art in 2020. I guess, hey, do you guys want to talk about where we kind of started with this, and where that initially came from, and then we're gonna invite a very special guest back on.
Yes. I can go ahead and kick us off. So I know that a week ago, technically, because last year it was on July 5th, technically. But we had Michael Allen Herman and Josie Eli Lipinski, I believe was her last name, on. They were the creators of the podcast Call of the Void. Since then, that podcast, by the way, if you haven't checked it out, definitely please go check it out. Call of the Void, phenomenal. Has released a second season, also phenomenal. Like, they're just killing the game. Real talk. But
since also, I believe they are both now officially Hermans. They got married.
That is true.
Habits, and now they're just like an amazing power couple making Lovecraftian podcasts with their friends. That's what you do. So.
It's a beautiful.
I think they actually got married the week after, or maybe even the day after.
Totally. So cheers, guys, from wherever you're watching this.
Yeah. Happy anniversary.
Literally happy anniversary, y'all. Like it's a week of anniversaries, but it's a week of anniversaries and a day about thinking about growth and where we've come from and where we are now. A year ago to today, it's still the same concept, right? We're still working on ourselves. We're working on shadow work through art. We're talking about the nexus between light and dark. We're talking about the shadows and really digging into what art is and can be. And over the last year, we've discovered, on talking to the different guests that we've had and talking about the different topics, we've discovered ways that art can not only help people feel, but help people heal as well. And we've discovered that we really enjoy talking about that with different artists. What about you guys?
Yes. And we've had lots of other guests along the lines, and we should have some popping in throughout the show, possibly. We'll see. I think we can possibly see that somebody may be joining us shortly. But before that, we have our main guest, who is also returning, friend of the show.
Let's bring her on.
Amazing Michelle.
Michelle!
How's it going?
It's going good.
Good. So you're back again, and we have a different topic than last time. We talked about body horror last time, and now we're talking about maybe a different kind of existential horror, which is remakes, reboots, and reimaginings. So I want to just kick that off briefly with a brief question about just the concept of rebooting, reimagining. Do you think that's a generally creative thing, or is it really just a sign of phoning in laziness?
Dun, dun, dun.
I think it's both of those things. And, I would hate to be like, some kind of like gatekeeper and say only one person gets to make thing, right? And then no one else gets to make a thing after this person. That's not great for art. But sometimes it depends like why they're making a remake. Um, Sometimes remakes are just cash grabs, and you can tell when the remake is constantly calling back to the original, and that's the only time it's ever good is when they're like, oh, I remember in the thing, or they have little callbacks and stuff. The really interesting remakes are the ones that take the same material and do their own thing with it. Like a really good example of that is the reboot of the remake of Suspiria,
Hmm.
which is like, Suspiria is one of those like Golden Cow movie horror films that's like canonized. Don't touch it. And I honestly, when I first heard that they were remaking it, I was like, that's probably gonna be terrible. But then I watched it, and it was like its own complete different thing. Like he went a completely different way with it. Where Suspiria was colorful, this one was darker toned, where Suspiria was about like it just focused on different aspects and incorporated different things, and it was just as good, I think, as the original one in a different way. Like it totally reimagined this entire concept, but it was fresh, even though he was remaking. But it never felt like, I hardly ever felt like he was calling back to the original Suspiria at all. It's a whole other movie. Like you could almost call it a different movie, really, like a different name. But it's not the same like plot beats and stuff. Like that has a skeleton of the original movie, but yeah, I think it all depends on intent, and it's very transparent to me when I watch movies if a remake is made out of an artist being excited about a concept and wanting to have his take on it or her take on it or their take on it, or somebody or a studio kind of cash grab member thing. Now member berries like from South Park, like member thing. Well, here's thing, it's back again, but kind of new. Like
Yeah.
it's very obvious to me.
The family meme that just never ends. It's always amazing to me that there's like a whole new set of Fast and Furious memes that erupts every time there's a new movie, which is like every year. So I hear you about that, and I think you're right when it comes to like what are we actually, what's the intention behind it, right? You can tell if there's money, it smells like money and a cash grab, for your nostalgia, or if you're able to grow and kind of find something new. And I'm curious, so we've gone ahead, we've grown into something a little bit beyond what we started off which was a goofy horror theater. And that's what we were going to start off at, doing in the midst of like a pandemic. And we started discovering as we were talking to more and more people that right now there's a lot of collective shadow work going on just in general. And some of that is what horror provides, but there's a little beyond that where comedy and drama kind of come into the same place. So I would love to hear, what are your thoughts on the idea that horror is this way for us to do some collective shadow work? I love that you already mentioned Suspiria, because I think that's one of those kind of originals, for establishing that, going a little deeper beneath the surface. What are your thoughts about that?
And it was interesting during the pandemic that you mentioned that I found myself very much drawn to post-apocalyptic and horror media during the pandemic when I was, had all the extra spare time. And it felt like a lot of people would say it seems counterproductive when you're living through, like, I mean, we lived through something that could be in a book, like The Stand. Like, it obviously didn't go that bad, but this could have been totally like, a plot to a book series. It could have been called COVID-19, and we're all dealing with it. And they've written tons of books about pandemics, and it felt people would think it's counterproductive to ingest horror or anything like that when you're living in a stressful situation. But I found it very cathartic to see situations that went worse than the one I'm in, and people still make it through it at the end. It was very, I was like drawn to like these horror stories and horror movies and horrible things happening, but like people made it through, and there's a final girl, or somebody makes it to the end, or in the, like, for example, in The Stand, which I reread during the pandemic, I was like, oh, it's perfect. Like people make it to the end in The Stand. Right. They get through it. Not everybody does, but it kind of gave me hope in this weird, ironic way that like we could get through it too, even though the situation wasn't obviously as bad as The Stand, but it was it's just, you know, horror is a way for like you to practice, I guess, like seeing these things, these horrible things, and kind of like make a shield on yourself that you can deal with these things because you see other people dealing with them. Obviously they're fictional, but you know, horror doesn't come from a vacuum. Horror comes from fear and from real life fears that people, you know, they extrapolate on, and they make their piece of art with it to capture the fear, to own the fear, to wrestle the fear down and say, you know, it could happen, but you can get through it. And I think that's why, and I wasn't the only one I noticed that did this. There was a lot of people I saw themselves immersing themselves in post-apocalyptic stories and movies about pandemics and things like that. It's just like, it's oddly comforting, you know?
It's almost like I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we kind of talked about how relationships help you work through things, whatever type of relationship that is. And so when you're involved in art, whether it be whatever medium it might be, that is a relationship. That's a relationship between you and the art, between you and the artist. And that gives you a moment to be able to see something reflected back at you. It gives you a chance to be able to examine something that maybe you couldn't see in yourself because you're stepping out of it, and you're able to be objective as opposed to subjective because there's someone else's point of view involved. And I really love that side of it, right? That idea of the collective shadow work. But in order to be able to have that kind of collective shadow work and to continue to be able to move forward, we also have to meet people where they're at, right? We can't necessarily be, you know, as a theater, 3.5-hour shows in this day and age kind of a thing, right? And movies have to meet people where they're at. We can't necessarily use the techniques and the technology that we used 30 years ago to be able to create art that will resonate with people and then be able to reach people the way that we want it to. So with that being said, I'm just curious, what are some things? I know your concentration is more movies than theater, but some ways that we could try and prevent theater and movies as well from becoming sort of antiquated, sort of, you know, like dinosaurs. One thing that comes to mind is VR and integrating that with art and how that could be a new level of performance. So what are your thoughts on that? Not necessarily VR itself, but like,
well, you know, I actually am like super into VR stuff. I only have a PlayStation VR, but they were actually, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, the animated shorts that get nominated for Oscars. One of the shorts was actually a VR short that you could watch. It was on YouTube, and YouTube has like you can if YouTube picks up certain things, if you're in a VR helmet, you can actually like do the 360 look around thing. And it was a short where you were one of the characters and you were sitting next to somebody in a car while they were talking to you. And like, and it was like shifting through their different memories and stuff. And like, so you were like in their memories, and you could 360 turn and look up and down. And like there was always stuff going around in the corners that you couldn't. It was like the coolest thing. I was like, I feel like VR is like really underutilized, but it's also, it's expensive. It's the resolution's kind of not up to snuff yet. I think in the next like 10 years, VR is gonna blow up. It's right there. I mean, the Oculus 2 just came out, and I'm sorry if I'm nerding out about VR, but VR is like a really interesting way to like immerse somebody into a piece of art. I went to South by Southwest, like I think it was like 3 years ago, and Terrence Malick had a VR short as well that he directed. Really? And it was really cool. Like you were like standing in the middle of a room, and there were like people like dancing around you and like doing art, and like it like, and then it would like transport you like into space, and like, you know, it's a very dynamic and interesting and immersive way to like you know, get somebody interested in art. But the thing I wrote down, because you're right, I'm not super familiar with theater, but I did see this company. They were called Manual Cinema, and they do I saw them in Chicago, and they do basically, you go to the theater and the band is there and all the instruments are there, and they do like puppet and shadow work. Everything they do is live, and they do puppets, and they use the puppets to make shadows, and they project it onto this big screen, but it's all in real time. So all the transitions are in real time, that you can see all the people like running around, changing clothes, getting the materials. When songs come on, all the people that are doing the shadow puppets put the puppets down and go play the music. and then sometimes they split off, and some do the music and some do the puppets. It's the coolest thing ever. It's like so immersive, but it's still like a theater. It's like a play. They did Frankenstein, and they also, if you've seen, did you ever see the Candyman remake trailer that came out? The puppet one? Did you see that?
Oh
one?
yeah.
That's who did it. Was Manual Cinema. That's all their puppet work and all their stuff.
Okay.
They're absolutely fantastic, and they also interestingly did a live show during the pandemic for Christmas. They did a Christmas Carol, but they actually inserted a pandemic storyline into the Christmas Carol where, the lady that's talking, she's kind of like the Scrooge character. Her husband died from COVID. And like all the ghosts were visiting her, but it was like Christmas Carol pandemic style. It was they did it live over live stream. Fantastic. And that's the kind of thing I think that could get people to come to theater, because they use a lot of technology. And the cool thing is, after the show, they let you go behind the scenes and play with everything and touch everything, and they'll show you how they do everything. They're like the nicest, super nicest people, and it's like the level of talent that is involved with this. But it's interactive and with technology, but it's using old school methods like shadows and puppets and stuff. And I thought it was just this cool mesh of like tech and like analog style stuff. It was really cool.
That's
beautiful.
That is so intriguing, and I can't wait for technology to continue to go in the direction that it's going. I think it's so cool. I got the chance to do some VR gaming about a week ago, and first time I've actually been able to do it that like fully immersed, and it was just the coolest experience. Speaking of cool experiences, I would like to backtrack just a smidgen here, because you had brought up The Stand, and you brought up how you reread The Stand during the pandemic. I did the same. I also reread The Stand, and I actually ended up watching The Stand reboot on what station was it? CBS, NBC, Fox? I don't know. It was on network television, but I watched it. I watched the reboot, and I watched it with my family. We watched it week by week, and growing up, The Stand, the original Stand, the TV made-for-TV movie, was a part of my family, like heritage almost. We would watch it on a regular basis. We had the movie at home, the multiple VHS movie, many VHSs, and please don't not rewind the video in the middle, because that's really annoying. So question one, did you get a chance to see the reboot? And then question two, what did you think about it? Because I have some opinions.
I did watch Reboot because I honestly love the 90s Stand television series. I actually saw it when it first came out, but I was like really young.
Yes.
You know, and it was like burnt into my brain. Like, it has one of the greatest openings ever, like with Don't Fear the Reaper and the stuff and the flu escaping. It's like amazing. I mean, it's obviously it's hampered now. It's dated because they had TV money, 90s TV money, so it looks a little cheesy. But I think it's fantastically done. And then I watched Reboot, and it wasn't good. So this is an interesting thing. Like, sometimes reboots try to do things differently because it's a reboot, right? So obviously you don't want to rehash the same thing, but sometimes people do things a certain way because that's what works. And the reboot tried to do this like time sliding thing that does not work. It jumps around. Like, everybody knows the best part of any end of the world thing is watching shit fall apart, right? Like, you love it's just the feeling of like seeing society falling apart. That's like exhilarating. It's one of the most interesting parts of any like end of the world thing. But they like jump around to where it's already fell apart, and then they go back, and then they go forward, and they go back, and it was just not done well at all. And like, I didn't like the casting, and it was weird because it's longer, but it feels rushed.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my God. Yes.
Right.
That was so. Yes, I watched it with my brother and my mother, and that was our argument, is that we wanted more fleshing out of certain characters, and they didn't. Like, we wanted more fleshing out of certain characters from the 90s version, and then they went the opposite way. Like, Trash Can Man, what were you doing? Why did you do Trash Can Man like that?
I know.
Trash Can Man,
awesome.
one of the most complex characters in the story, in the book. His history is mind-boggling, and you have to know his history to know why he is who he is. And they took all of that away from him and just made him like a bumbling idiot. They took all of his complexity away, and it was so frustrating. I understand what they were trying to do with the like they were trying to get rid of the idea of the magical Negro with Whoopi,
Yes.
and I understand that. And I understand that with Larry, what they were trying to do by racially casting him in a different way. I get what they were trying to do, but I feel like they missed the mark. And it was a bummer because I was so excited for it. And
I felt like they could have kept Larry the same and just changed stuff he says. Like, you know, I could see like that brown sound sure do get around, that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're gonna have to, you know, nix that. But I feel like I was actually interested because I was like, oh, I know why they changed Larry, because I know his character and I know that it's even worse in the book, and then it wasn't aged well in the 90s one, so I got it. But like, it's just they just didn't do anything with it just felt really flat and fast, and there's like, it's just it was too little too slick looking, too produced. Like, what's great about the 90s version is like a road movie almost, and like the latter half of the film, they're traveling, you know, they're finding out about themselves via like nature, by immersing themselves, because nature has returned because society has collapsed. So they've kind of like, it's like a journey, like a cleansing journey before they get to the sacrifice, right? You know, cleansing themselves of all the worldly wants and needs, and now they're just human. They're just their shell, ready to be filled with, and I'm not even religious, but ready to be filled with the God's power to vanquish evil, right? And it just like, it just didn't feel, it's not folksy enough. It's very folksy, kind of like Americana style feel, which is like, you know, Stephen King's, that's his thing, Americana and horror like combined, right? It just didn't feel like, and it just, there was no feeling to it. And I don't want to say like it was like a cash grab, because, you know, it's a good story, and honestly, if they had done the reboot right, I'd have super been into it, because there's things they could improve from the 90s version, honestly, but it just I wasn't a fan.
That was it.
No, wasn't it?
No.
I mean, and plus, of recent Randall Flags, the best one is still Matthew McConaughey.
Oh yeah, he had that really sleazy used car salesman, like, but like, instead of a used car, it's your soul, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of long, luxuriant, floppy hair, Roy.
You guys, we've got a special guest. Please welcome Roy Sexton. He has been one of our guests on Beyond the Ghostlight in this past year. Let's give him a little love. Welcome, Roy. Welcome, Roy.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for that introduction. Well, I want to know what Nick is drinking all the time, and when does it start? In anticipation of this show, is it like 2 p.m?
Oh, it's a rare thing of lime juice and water. It's a British tradition, naval tradition. Mm-hmm. It doesn't include sodomy or the lash. So.
Well, is that the boutique you're going to open up there on 9 Mile? Sodomy on the lash?
Yeah, exactly. Rum, sodomy, and the lash. Welcome.
Or that could
ask us about our 3-for-1.
When you, Luna, and I have a folk trio, we could call ourselves Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash.
I love it.
Simon and Garfunkel songs.
Nice.
We'll do Joni.
Why
do you want me here again? I forget. Why am I here?
We just thought, it would be nice to have, people from our previous guests just to celebrate with us,
Well, thank you guys for doing this. Have you guys been at this a year now or longer? How long have this?
We're so ancient now. It's been a whole year.
Fantastic.
And let me push pause. Have you been able to see Black Widow yet? I know you're a huge comic book.
Not yet.
We're waiting.
I'm also cheap, and I'm not quite ready to go into a place with a lot of other people. So I'm like, I could spend $30 to see it at home, when I'm going to invariably buy the DVD, which now apparently will be available in like 2 weeks. No, I don't know it, but I do feel like the DVDs are here like this, either because I'm old and time is flying, or I'm just I spend $30 because I want to watch it now, and then another $30 because I want to get the 4K one, because you've talked me up in being in pandemic, even though really I don't know that there's that discernible of difference, especially for something like Black Widow. And then, I'm going to buy the t-shirt. So I'm like, you know what? I may just wait There's enough
Right.
on Disney Plus. I'm watching Loki. That's is satisfying me right now. But I do want to see it very much. But I just can't. I'm not going into a theater. I'm not quite there yet. Yeah.
Just curious. No, I hear you. You know, we're here today. We're kind of chatting reboots, remixes, everyone's favorites, sequels, and then prequels made after the originals, so they're technical still sequels. So yes, I wanted to know, or we wanted to know, what piece of art deserves to get its own sequel, remade, rebooted, reimagined, and what would you do if you were wearing the director pants?
It's such an interesting question, and I love the way you teed it up earlier. Sort of like why do them?
Yeah.
And I think there are maybe three major categories of why. There's something that is just a classic that deserves revisiting time after time, whether it's Shakespeare or Jane Austen or something of that nature. We're like, let's see what a modern sensibility brings to this classic text. I understand the reasoning for that. I think there is money is a big rationale for some people, something that's very popular. You're like, I think that was perfect the first time, but I guess we're going to do it again because it made a lot of money. And then I think the most interesting one is when something had an interesting idea, but just didn't quite land the execution either. And also sometimes I think it's the timing of which. And so the reason I'm sort of sitting so strangely in this chair sideways is I wanted you to see my poster of the black hole, which it's kind of off there, but it's one of those large original, movie theater posters. I got it at Disney World when Disney MGM actually still sold movie merchandise as opposed to things Pixar movies, which was movies, but they used to sell classic old stuff and they had cool things at MGM. So I bought that there and I was thrilled. And I think I'm one of the only people in America who liked the black hole when it came out the first time. And I always thought there's a really interesting concept. I realize it's a riff on Heart of Darkness. It's a riff on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We had things later like Event Horizon, Ad Astra, and even Supernova that I think, whether they knew it or not, are all kind of using the same model. Event Horizon probably being the closest. And Event Horizon went, for me, if it was an informal remake of the Black Hole, it missed the mark. Because to me, the interesting thing about the black hole is what you do with Maximilian Schell's character and his isolation from humanity and his intentions. Your notion about sort of the shit falling apart, which we could say basically 2010 to now. But I would be more interested in his journey into madness in parallel to then the people who stumble upon him and try to figure out what's going on. But too often these movies are told after that. We're with the normal people. And I'm sorry, I did not care one bit for Ernest Borgnine's character. I love Anthony Hopkins. I feel like Anthony Perkins rather, is wasted in the original. Yvette Mimieux, I'm sorry, I don't care. The Bottoms Boys, I can't ever remember which one is which. There was just this, Forrester, there's a certain group of well-meaning white people that we spend a lot of time with at the beginning of the black hole that I don't care about. And when it finally gets interesting is when we get to this ghost ship run by a madman, and I'm like, how did that happen? How did we get there? So if I were to remake it, I would say let's spend more time on that path. How does somebody get to the point from well-intentioned, I'm going to create a society that will be a utopia because on Earth we can't figure it out, and it goes awry? To me, that's the interesting thing in that film. And I think part of its problem too is Hollywood always does this. There's a sci-fi movie that does big business. You might know it, Star Wars. So everyone has to have their own sci-fi movie, not realizing the reason Star Wars is popular is not because it's a sci-fi movie, it's because it's escapist comic book fun. So if you look at everything that came after that did well, Indiana Jones, Gremlins, Back to the Future, it's all on the same chassis. It's not sci-fi, it's baby boomer Spielberg winking at film serials and things from the 50s that generation loved and translating it for our age group in a way that made sense. Poltergeist is another example. That's not a horror movie. It is a baby boomer riff on co-opting areas and building neighborhoods that don't need to be built, and it's more Twilight Zone than it is pure horror. So to me, everyone was like, oh, we need to make sci-fi movies, and the black hole got lost in that, and it was ill-timed. So I think it's an interesting idea and story, and I know that the guys that redid Tron at one point were going to take it on, and I'm not sure I would pick them. I would love to see a female director, honestly, take it on. I think it would have a very interesting piece. The other thing I think deserves revisiting. My mom and I were talking about American Psycho last night. She's watched it for the first time in 20 years, and so she was asking me, "What is this?" And I think I really liked it, but I had to sleep on it. And I said, "Well, you got to understand." Mary Herron took Bret Easton Ellis's novel that was problematic, especially from a feminist perspective, and flipped it on its head in partnership with Christian Bale. And the way the movie ends leaves you thinking this is the ultimate satire on toxic masculinity and consumerism and all the things that the movie is ridiculing, but people couldn't see past their clutch the pearls moment about it to say, this is actually an interesting piece. And there was a musical about 5 or 6 years ago that I love the score, I've never seen, that I had the misfortune of coming out the same year Hamilton did. And so it got lost in the shuffle. I also think they took I was watching a YouTube clip last night. They took a very conventional 80s, like, let's celebrate the 80s. And I'm like, let's revisit that musical. But instead of doing the very conventional 80s neon, all the kitschy stuff, do like they did when they had Sweeney Todd with Patti LuPone and they were doing Sweeney Todd as if they were inmates in an asylum. You know, have this almost be a one-man show where he's every character, because the idea of it all being in Patrick Bateman's head still fascinates me.
Yes.
Sort of needs to be explored, and nothing but the stage is the perfect vehicle for that. So don't go conventional in your staging, go very unconventional, because Duncan Sheik's score is brilliant. And so that would be the theater reboot I would like to see happen sooner rather than later. So I obviously, you planted this question and I rambled on because I had some thoughts.
Beautiful. Thank you, Roy. We all love you, and thank you for coming along.
Thank you guys for what you're doing. You're filling a niche that needs to be filled, and you guys are just such delightful souls. I love you very much, and thank you for what you're doing. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
It was so good to see him. Yes, and I loved what he was bringing up.
I need an American Psycho musical in my life. I did not know that.
I know. That sounds amazing.
Hole that needs to be filled into.
Listen, American Psycho is one of my favorite movies of all time. So as soon as we get off of this, I will be juggling the American Psycho musical and finding that score because I need to listen to it because that sounds amazing. Speaking of amazing, it looks like we've got someone else knocking on the Ghostlight door here. We've got Kathleen McLean coming on to the stream.
Hi there.
Oh my goodness, I can hear myself.
Hi there. How is everybody?
Oh my goodness, I can hear myself. And I don't.
Oh, yeah, let me turn it down a little bit here. How's that? Is that a little bit better, ladies?
It's a little bit better.
I'm in the last few minutes here. Let's try this. I'm on the last few minutes of my commute home, so I'm still on the road. But hi.
I appreciate you joining us so much. Thank you for coming on. I know you're commuting. This delay is crazy, so I'm just gonna say, sweetheart, honey child, boo boo thing. We sent you a question, and we want to know your opinion on it. We want to know what you think. What piece of art would you most like to see remade, rebooted, reimagined? Somebody adding a new creative level to it. And if it was your project, what would you do with that reboot?
Yeah, I had some time to think about that. And my heart was torn in two different directions because I'm a theater person and I'm also a film and television person. In terms of film and television, I am not a producer. My eldest son is a producer and a director, and my daughter is an editor, but I am not. I'm only talent, right? So I've only got opinion on my competition, my friends, the work I know. But from a film standpoint, I think the project I would like to not necessarily reboot, but revisit and graduate to the next level is a film from the 90s called And the Band Played On. I don't know if you're aware of the impact of the band played on, but also like the star power, the footprint of that film, energetically, cinematically, vocally, is
Is it Matthew
just
Modine in that? I think.
it's on an epic level, right? But
Yeah.
it's time to evolve that story, because a lot's happened in the last 30 years since the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of the same stuff. It's like chickens coming home to roost, you know? It's the age-old argument about what percentage of the population is engaging in an alphabet lifestyle while at the same time condemning it and choking out a portion of the population because of social norms that are so outdated and antiquated and just murderous in nature, you know, a la the Laramie Project, a la George Floyd, a la Black Lives Matter and Me Too. Like, this is the same beast that keeps coming back to haunt us. And I would love to see a revisitation of that story, only extrapolated over the last 35 years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't start the fire of our social issues, right? Not one, but it's all the same thing. It's all one. It's at some point we leave empathy and compassion for what? Anger, hate, greed, fear, confusion, illness, whatever. It's all a
Yeah.
crutch, right? So I'd like to see something like that happen from an artistic standpoint as a filmographer. Theatrically, I'm still thinking the same thing, but in a different, more esoteric way. I love the idea of Jesus Christ Superstar. I absolutely love the idea of you take an ideology and you turn it on its head and you pull it tooth and nail into a contemporary space, and then you don't explode it, but you implode it, and it becomes bigger and better and reaches a group of people that were heretofore unreachable, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
esoterically speaking, cosmically speaking, astrologically speaking, energetically speaking, I would like to see the evolution of Jesus Christ Superstar into something far more expansive that reflects the cosmology of what we're dealing with right now. Like, we're leaving a space we've occupied cosmically for 400 years and moving full-fledged into a mature age of Aquarius. And that's real. And that's things that were talked about lightheartedly and sung and danced in a cutesy kind of way. What were we talking about earlier? Never mind about the 60s, the hippie version of it, and the bell bottoms and the wide lapels and the long hair. Go into the heart of the matter. What was the conversation? The conversation was, your conservative rules are a lie while you're playing games behind closed doors, and really and truly you're trying to matriculate me into this, but I'm telling you I have a relationship outside of that, and it doesn't look the way you formulated my uniform, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really the truth of what Jesus Christ Superstar is, and that's happening again and again and again. We're understanding that religion is ritual and relationship is spiritual. We're starting to understand that collectively. We're starting to activate that collectively. So, how do we write music and dance dances and tell stories that are not just Jesus Christ? They're Buddha, they're Allah, they're the god Ra, they're, paganism, they're pantheism, there, all of that. There is a relationship to be had. And I would love to see a kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a trilogy, maybe, a la Laramie and 10 Years Later, or like the Texas trilogy or something like that, like a pod of theatrical pieces that are storytelling and dance and music that is a kind of we didn't start the fire of theater.
Yeah.
You know,
Love it.
that theater of cruelty, that shock and awe of we are not being presentational, but here we are representationally, right? Like,
Yeah.
give me the best of what you got.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
that's like that's an autistic fantasy, I guess. That's how I sort of couched that question, was if budget wasn't an issue, if creative resource wasn't an issue, what would you like to leave as a footprint? What would you like to leave as a legacy? What kind of creation, co-creating with the universe, would you like to do? And those were the things that came about for me.
No.
I love it.
And I think they're rooted in truth and authenticity, but also in social justice and in like gender and sex positivity and identity and the things that I think matter going forward, that collectively we can heal in one another, right? Like healing and balance. I think those are conversations that need to be had on a consistent level.
Mm.
I think so too, and I think it's a good place for us to have those conversations. This, and the ibis in general. So and I know that we're working with you to bring some of that along. We have to have dinner again. So
No, definitely. Definitely. That's what's up. And again, like IBIS is about shadow work, right? That's your focus, is shadow work. The
yeah.
the darkest, most difficult part of shadow work is that it's sometimes out of reach of the light work, because nothing functions in a vacuum and everything functions at its highest capability in balance, right? So the anchor has to be reachable. Whether you're working in the light, then the anchor of shadow has to be reachable. If you're working in the shadow, then the anchor of light has to be reachable, because that balance is delicate, but it's also a concrete foundation from which everything else emanates.
Hmm.
So when we're deep in shadow work, we still have to kind of keep an eye on the light, right? There's
Yeah.
balance to be had there.
I do love, I will throw out there kind of this, what Jesus Christ Superstar did at its time, and what you're kind of reminding us, bringing it into a modern age, is it did that, is it flipped this idea of what it is to be Christian, male, what have you, and asked why through the own language, through the stories, but with song and dance, and bringing in a piece that theater only, only live theater can bring, right? And so you take the ritual,
Right.
turn it on its head, and then you bring it into the now. What would that look like now? What does that look like now? Turning the ritual on its head, turning these stories that a lot of us are very familiar with, and reimagining what that looks like. I think that's a really, really cool way
Well,
of modernizing it.
yeah, and again, it's not just from a religious standpoint that I'm talking about, because we're a more secular society, right? So we're moving away from that. And yeah, there's a rather loud minority of people that still are like the last vestiges of, those are the things that built this society and built Western civilization and built humankind. And, everybody else knows that's not true. But by
So
the same token, it's not just about spirituality, it's the cosmology of how that's changed ideologically. The basis of that story is humans don't make the rules. Humans have to obey the rules of the universe. The universe is is a conspiracy theory that's a conspiracy reality. But it's not a foregone conclusion. There's free will. It's a forebuilt system. So energy is energy is energy. And ideology about religion or theology is one energy. But the energy of working together in empathy and compassion is still the same thing as it was back then. You know, Jesus Christ Superstar turned the ritual on its head, turned the rules makers on their head. The rules makers in the church were cut your hair, you damn hippie, get a job. It's not about that, you know. Meanwhile, they're like peace, love, and hair grease. What the hell are you talking about? I'm in the relationship, right? So there's a lack of language, there's a lack of understanding. And the same thing exists now. It's like the people who are making the rules are still suits. There's still people that believe that a school year needs to be the 9 months that is, you know, in conjunction and concert with the harvest. What the fuck? 90% of the population is not still farming. Why are we sending kids to school from September to May? It's not making any sense. The people that are still making the rules are the people that are jamming up the pipeline. And what we can extrapolate from that is that humanity has always worked long before people made rules. When they were dependent on the universe as it stood, when they were dependent on the planet as it stood, they followed the rules.
Yeah.
There is a season to hunt buffalo. There is a season, it's a waste of time to hunt buffalo. And it's better to pick grains and berries and grow something.
Right.
When you
And
get in the rhythm of the universe, the people don't make the rules, and the rules makers fall away. And that's really what's happening in the age of Aquarius is why are you making the rules? Who are you? You're a slob on the bus just like the rest of us. Get in a rhythm and stop clogging up the pipeline. That's what Jesus Christ Superstar did about theology and religion and the beginnings of social justice. And now we can see that everywhere. Corporate America is falling away. We can have Zoom meetings. Why the hell do we still need office buildings? Stop it.
I hear you
It
there.
obstructs,
It's an
it
interesting
obstructs
question.
the view of sunset, right? Like there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to step out your door and watch the sunset. Well, the office buildings aren't necessary,
Right.
right? I mean,
Hey,
the tall apartment buildings can be in the middle of the city, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. So as soon as we stop chasing the people who are chasing the greedy ends that they can't take with them anyway, and we start reinvesting in where we are for a legacy's sake, it already turns itself on its head.
I love
that
this legacy you're talking about leaving, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see this Jesus Christ Superstar just immediately.
Yeah, because I can't write a
I
lick of
just want to
music.
say thank
It's
you.
not me.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight and rejoining us and sharing your vision with us, because I'm right there with you. I can't. These are two stories that definitely need to be, that do deserve our time now. So thank you, Kate, as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Kate. Don't
See
worry,
you
we're
there.
gonna have dinner real soon. I promise. The four of us are just gonna brain segue. All right.
Right
Thank
on.
you so much.
Bye-bye now.
See you in a bit, Kate. Okay, lovely. Just always, Kate always has so much to add to with her thoughts and views on theatre and art. Wonderful. Um, so coming back to things about reboots, I know, Michelle, that your general view on reboots is, you know, that you're less fond of the reboots, but I know you know like some.
Yeah.
And you know, what are some of your favorites, and why are they your favorites? You
Um,
think?
it's funny because I made a list. I talked about Suspiria earlier. That was one of
Uh-huh.
them. This is like an anime one. But their Netflix released Devilman Crybaby. I think it
Okay.
was like the 30th or the 40th anniversary of Devilman. So like for people that don't know Devilman, it's like it was written and illustrated by Go Nagai, like way back in the day. Like I believe it started in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And it's had a lot of iterations and adaptations over the years. They did a 70s like cartoon, and it's actually a very adult story. But they did like a 70s anime series that was kind of more geared towards kids, a little more, enemy of the day, kind of like he was more of a superhero. And then in the 80s, they did an actual adaptation of the darker manga. And funny enough, it was a lot of Ghibli people worked on it. And like it's like this really sexual, dark, like. So Devilman basically is about a demon invasion of the earth. And the only person that can fight these demons is Devilman. And Devilman is the way he is because he's a human that has been possessed by a demon, but he keeps his human heart. He keeps his soul. He keeps his morality, basically. But he's basically the perfect like melding of man and demon. And the only person that can fight these demons is Devilman because he contains his morality still. He still cares about life. And demons, on a general basis, don't. They're just here to destroy and to rip apart humans. And he fights them because he wants to obviously keep his life. He has like a girlfriend and a family and all this kind of stuff. Very dark story. Does not end well. And if anybody's ever seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, the end of Evangelion, where they're on the beach and everything's destroyed, that is actually 100% like influenced by Devilman. Devilman is such a ubiquitous thing in Japan that so many people are like, enamored with it. There are artists there, It's one of the very few things I've ever read that has an absolutely sad, dark, everybody loses ending, and it's gorgeous. And it's never been completely adapted because for some reason they never get to the end part because like they run out of money or whatever. So in the 80s they made an OVA, ran out of money. 90s they made another version, ran out of money. They couldn't do the whole ending. And then Devilman Crybaby came out and it did the whole thing. And it's only I think it's 13 episodes on Netflix. And it's completely revisioned though. Like the art style's new and like they got like a really artsy fartsy like director for it. And it's just, it does the entire thing and it's super dark and it does it does the bummer ending and everything. And I was blown away. Like I turned it on and like one day and I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do Devilman again. Let's fine, see how this works. And I just didn't stop watching it the whole time. I stayed up till like 7 a.m. and I'm like crying, like watching this. And like my boyfriend's like asleep on a couch like hours ago. He doesn't like anime. And, and I'm just like, wow, it like blew my mind. So that's a really good reboot I like. I can just go kind of quick. Like The Fly is a very good, Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah.
Fantastic remake. Yeah. And of course it has his patented like body horror take on it, but and it's such a great story because it's like it's a doomed romance. But it also it talks about like the hubris of man. Like man wants to break the law of physics. Like these laws are in place and we think we're higher than those laws, which is like science always. That's like how science works, really. But the hubris of like thinking that, or doing it for the wrong reason, I guess you could say, wanting to break physics because you want to be a rock star scientist and not because you actually want to help humans. And he's basically punished for that in this film because he gets turned into fly and he's like deteriorating and melding into the new creature. And it's just a fantastic take on the material. And actually, the original Fly is not like bad, but this is like just, it blows it out of the water in my opinion, mainly because the effects in it are, even to this day, I'm such a proponent for physical practical effects because it just looks good. It still looks disgusting, horrible, and horrifying to this day. The Thing is a really good remake. John Carpenter's The Thing. Yeah. Actually, similar reasons for The Fly. It's just it was at the apex of practical effects that it was made. I mean, and interestingly, it wasn't very well received when it first premiered because it was so intense and the effects were so good that people like literally were just too grossed out to like enjoy the film because it's like really gross and horrifying. So they couldn't even like fathom any subtext, or they were just like, ugh, like when they were watching it. Maniac. There's the remake of Maniac I thought was really good. And that's an interesting take on it because Maniac, the original movie, is like super grimy and sweaty and like sticky and gross. Like has the grossest protagonist and he's like nasty and he's like doing terrible things to women, and you're like, ugh, and then like the new Maniac is like the slicker take on it with a similar type of a character, but he's more it's interesting because he's more like relatable. Like you wouldn't immediately be repulsed by him. Like in the original film, like he keeps getting women, and you're just like, how is he attracting these people? Because he's like really repellent as a person. But in the new one, they make him kind of like an artist that's and people will give artists a lot of leeway for being a little bit weird, because that's kind of how artists are, so it kind of works a little bit better. I think that like the theme of the film where he's like attracting these women and doing these horrible things to them.
Right.
Oh, and one more I had was the 90s Gamera series, the trilogy. It was really good. It took it's honestly one of the best kaiju trilogies of all time, in my opinion. Like it took like Gamera, which has like always been kind of like second fiddle to Godzilla, and it just made this fantastic dark like trilogy where like things mattered, and it was talking about serious shit. And it's like Gamera's in it, but like the special effects were really good because it's like 90s special effects, and like it's a fantastic reboot of a series that, and I mean, it's honestly was better than anything Godzilla was doing at the time in the 90s as well.
Yeah. One of the things briefly about The Fly is it's really interesting to watch when you consider like influencers now, because he has that whole thing about how, oh, I can take this and I can become like an educator and I can do this. And you can watch it through that lens of like how everybody wants to be like a YouTube celebrity or a TikTok person or that. And it kind of predicts some of that as well.
He wanted to be a scientist influencer, basically.
Yeah.
He's got his little magazine covers. He's all like, I did science real good.
He wanted to be Hank Green is what he wanted. He wanted to be Hank Green and have his own TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram and be out there teaching science. That's what was going on.
Love it. I love it. We do have a couple of special guests joining us in a moment, but really quickly, I wanted to ask you, we've got some reboots coming out this year that I'm personally excited about because sometimes things deserve to be remade with the technology you have available, right? And so Dune, it's coming. It's finally, we've got some tech. We'll see. There's a big part of me that hopes it's not amazing, and it's just because I'm used to bad Dune movies, but I have a feeling I've heard really good things from everybody behind the scenes, and I have a feeling it's going to finally kind of capture some of the scope and scale while not losing the humanity of the story. So I just wanted to ask you, what movies do you feel deserve a reboot with the technology that we have available now?
I'm trying to think because I honestly I don't like reboots, so I was just thinking like, man, what is something but I thought like a spiritual sequel or a continuation or reboot of Koyan Sakatsi would be really good, like because we have 4K cameras and stuff now, and I feel like the idea, Koyan Sakatsi means life out of balance. And I feel like you could continue, like they made a trilogy where they talked about different aspects of society that like how it interacts with each other. And I feel like a fourth one or even a remake of the original could be great with all the time lapse and like how our world is like changed now. Maybe even make it topical, make it about climate change. Like maybe show, things that are happening in the world because of climate change, like floods and heat waves. Like if somebody had filmed when Australia was on fire, and I'm sure they did, or when LA had orange and red skies for like a week and flooding, like maybe make Koyan Sakatsi about us destroying our own Earth via global warming. I feel like it could be really topical, and we have like these super high def 4K cameras now. The original one I think was filmed 70 millimeters, so like it looks really good in 4K. I would love a 4K re-release of Koyan Sakatsi. Hint, if anybody's out there, like you should make that. But I feel like with the camera stuff that we have now, it could be incredible if it's done right. And I feel like it could be a good wake-up call for us about what are we doing to our planet? Like, travel around and look how our, how everything we're doing is affecting each country and each separate area of the planet. Like maybe show like the glacier caps melting, or like, I just feel like there could be more in that kind of like genre of like, I don't even know what to call it, like photo poems. I don't know, like Baraka and stuff like that. Like I don't know what genre that is, time lapse movies, but I feel like we're due for another one showing, modern stuff that's going on.
Right. No, that's really cool. And I think you're right. As we're like starting to see cameras redefine how we think of like literally time, or being able to capture so much more than just playing with resolution. We're starting to have the ability to really capture like some scope of things that is cool to talk about in sci-fi. So yeah, thank you, because I think that's a really exciting, like I would love to see that too. So awesome. I would like to go ahead and bring on a couple people that we haven't seen in a long time. So really quickly, just a lot of love to James Abbott and Brianna Kennedy as they come on and join us. Hey, what's going on, everybody? How are you?
Hi, my friends. Oh my gosh.
What's up, guys?
What's going on?
Oh.
Guys, it's so good to see you. For our audience members out there who may not know, this is Brianna Kennedy and James Abbott. They were two of the characters in our flagship Pioneer full-length production, We Closed, which was actually a reimagining itself. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. And if you haven't seen We Closed, don't worry. It is on our website. If you go to the catacombs, you can check it out. shadowoftheibis.com. Shameless plug. All right. So welcome. It's really, really good to see you. Luna, if you want to go ahead and ask our question of these fabulous people, we want to know a little something from you guys.
I do. And hey guys, and really quickly, I know you guys are working on art stuff again, and I just want to shout out Brianna. I think you have a show coming up soon. You were in rehearsal for.
I am sitting in rehearsal sweat right now, actually.
Oh,
That's the best sweat.
It feels amazing to be back. Just even the show won't be in a theater; it'll be traveling, but it's You Talk White at Open Book Theater Company. And we get to rehearse in open book, though. So even just smelling a theater brings me joy. It's beautiful, but more information will be out very soon.
Yes, love it. And James, you working on anything lately?
I am. I have a children's puppet show that I'm working on that'll be going out next week. It's called Adventures in Dreamland, and it'll be in Hamtramck, right up the street. It'll be at CMAP, which is Kerry Morrison's Art Productions, right out there on Carpenter Street. So we'll be there next week. What is it? Saturday and Sunday, right there at CMAP at 12 o'clock.
Yes.
So it'll be very fun. There's a lot of animals in it. So and I'm in it a lot. So it'll be fun.
So clear your schedules, everybody. We got live theater back here. Some of it is in familiar locations. Some of it is traveling to you. So keep your eyes out. But in the meantime, we're having a question for everybody. What piece of art would you most like to see remade, rebooted, reimagined? What deserves its own sequel or reimagining? What would you do to it if it were your project? You're wearing the director pants. And whoever wants to start, feel free.
James, you go.
Oh, wow. Okay. Question like that. See, I have a couple ideas, a couple things in my head. I think of, and I don't like remakes. I don't like, when they work right, it's a rare thing to get the flavor of the first one. So I don't like remakes. But if it can work in some form, okay. But I wouldn't mind seeing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I would not mind seeing a remake if done correctly. If done correctly, I believe it could be done. I have no faith in Hollywood if they were to be given such a thing. But if I was to have that, I mean, It's just you got to have the right energy. There's a lot you can do right now with tiny people running around. There's so much that I feel like Honey, I Blew Up the Kid and Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. That's untapped gold right there, because you can do anything. You're small. You can be anywhere. You can be on the water pipes. You can be anywhere. So it's a lot of energy. I mean, just imagine like, your Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in Detroit. That's it. Run with it. That's it. So that's what I would do. What about you, Brianna?
I originally, my first answer instinctually was something living single related.
Ooh, yeah.
But one could argue that Issa Rae's Insecure kind of brought us into a new realm of what friendship and black women interacting and all that looks like now. So it's like, okay, do we need it? Is it one of those things like, and then this is just in the TV show where I'm like, Fuller House, like you kind of wanted it the first season just to see what everyone was up to. And now they're in a million seasons and you're like, how did we get here? We didn't ask for all of this. And so like that would, but my official answer is I want either, I think it would be more of just a reimagining / retelling, but it would be a queer version of Waiting to Exhale. Because what I need to see on a big screen is the recreation, the reimagination of Angela Bassett's, clearing out all the things and then lighting this car on fire. I need to see the queer version of that. I need to see you cutting up the dildos. I need to see you, putting the 17 pets up for adoption or something. I need to see.
Don't come for me, Brianna. Don't come for me.
I need to see, I want to see that. And what's another scene out of that movie that I'd like to see? When Loretta Devine, the guy is moving in next door, and Loretta Devine comes over and she's like, here's all this food that I made. If you want to come over, if you're hungry, I made 400 soul food dishes and I have checkers and chess and all these games you could play. And then as he watches her walk away, there's a moment there. That's comedic, a lot of that comedic time. And I want to see that reflected by a community that, I'm a part of as well. So that would be my answer.
Beautiful.
Those are some really good answers, y'all. Thank you.
Seriously. Thank you. I just want to say thanks, guys, for hopping on. It's been a while, and I can't wait till the next project and break all the legs in the next few weeks.
Thank you so much.
Say that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for joining us. So good to see you. You have a wonderful rest of Sunday.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll see you next Saturday, Jane, or Sunday? Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday?
Your show's on Sunday?
Oh, my show, yeah, Saturday, Sunday. Yes. Okay, yes. Yes.
No, I'm showing up to your house. I'm showing up to your house, actually.
Yeah, you'll just have an audience of one, and she'll be like, "Do the show."
It's gonna be
do the show.
Right here on the porch.
Right here. Be ready. I was not ready.
Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
Right, thank you very much.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. We are getting to that time, y'all. And so I just want to say thank you again to all of our special guests that we had with us. I do have one more question for Michelle. It had to be asked since we're talking about sequels or prequels. The only sequel I could think of that doesn't actually have an original is Troll 2, that glorious hot mess. And I just wanted to see if you knew of others that exist out there somewhere, sequels without originals that maybe we should know about.
I actually got one in the mail like a couple weeks ago, but I haven't watched it yet. It's called Surf 2. I got it from Vinegar Syndrome, which is like a boutique Blu-ray company. Nice. They restore and release a lot of unknown films. Basically, they're just doing it for restoration purposes because, as a lot of people know, like literally like 50% of all the movies that ever been made, the negatives are destroyed. And then when you get into like silent film, it's almost 95% of silent films have their negatives are destroyed. So they're basically just scooping movies rights up, restoring them so that there's some sort of restoration out there to like archive it, basically.
Amazing.
And a lot of the films they archive are like these trashy exploitation films that like only are on VHS and stuff. And Surf 2, apparently, which I've not seen yet. I bought it. I blind bought it. There's no Surf 1 or Surf 3. It's just Surf 2. And like that was like the selling point to me on this movie. Literally, somebody said there's no Surf 1, and I was like, buy it immediately. That is the most hilarious concept to me, that they just made Surf 2, but there's no 1. And like apparently they reference things that are in part 1, but this part 1 does not exist.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And I just thought of another one. This is like an indie film that came out, gosh, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago. It's called Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. There's no Dude Bro Party Massacre 1 or 2. And there's a 3. And it's basically it's like this hilarious like send up of like those kind of movies. And it also has fake like stuff, like it's basically it emulates, like, you ever used to record stuff on those EP video VHS tapes, and like sometimes it would like old parts of shows would pop up in the middle where it didn't quite record over the top of, like, you know, when you re-recorded over like VHS,
Right. Yeah.
and then little parts of like, oh, Bobby's wedding would pop in, or like just a piece of the movie like that didn't quite record over the top. It does that in the movie. It has like weird other parts of stuff that just get clipped into it. There's like there's like clips of Surf, you know, Dude Bro Party Massacre 1, but like it doesn't exist, and like that's another one I just thought of just now, but it's actually pretty funny. It's an indie flick, and you know, and it doesn't have a lot of like, not a lot of people know about it, but they did a pretty good job with emulating the experience of watching a VHS tape that's been taped over too many times.
That reminds me of VHS.
Viewing party, I was just going to say, guys, VHS, and then we got to pop that one in. That sounds like a good one.
VHS is such a weird format. It just has some of that stuff loading in. I had an experience like that with a French teacher. She used to record, lessons, and used videotapes
and lessons, huh?
And
lessons, and we just learning up here.
Hey,
yeah, exactly. Class, did you learn anything?
Yes, so much. We learned everything.
Somebody's in the back taking like furious notes, like.
So in this day and age, if it was this day and age, somebody would be in the back like, "Why wasn't my camera on? Missed it." So listen, this has been absolutely wonderful. I've had a great time with everyone today. This has been a perfect 1-year anniversary. We do have a video from one of our past guests that didn't have a chance to join us this evening. So we're going to go ahead and play that so we can hear from him. Before we head out, we've got Brandy Joe Plambeck sending in a video submission here.
Hi, I just wanted to say happy 1-year anniversary. Beyond the Ghostlight is amazing. The Ibis is incredible. You all are incredible. Thank you for letting me be a part of your show during the past year. I hope there's many more years to come. Sorry I can't be there live, but I did want to weigh in on a property that I would love to see reimagined, remade, etc. I'm a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. So that is what I would love. I know the remake is one of my least favorite remakes of all time, but I think there's some good juice in there still, even though Wes Craven's New Nightmare kind of is like the definitive sort of reimagining. I still think that there's something in there, and I would love to see Heather Langenkamp back. So that is what I'm hoping for, and I hope we get it, and I think we might. So congrats again on a year, and you all are amazing. Happy hauntings.
Beautiful.
Oh, thanks, Scream Queens. Love you. And if you haven't, check out Brandy Joe's fantastic podcast. I believe it's actually called Scream Queens. Scaring is sharing.
Yes.
Sharing.
Very yeah.
Scaring is sharing, where they talk about just some fun movies, swapping movies that they haven't seen yet, and sharing the scares. So all the good stuff. Thanks, Brandy.
He brings up one of my favorite ideas for a remake, which is Wes Anderson's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, it's interesting to see some timeless, some things that are timeless be reimagined and then again. But I would be curious about it, see what happens with it. So anyway, I just want to say thank you again, Michelle, for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me back on. I appreciate it.
Seriously, I love reading your reviews, and you're the best.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Couldn't have asked for a better person to come on for our reboot, our reimagining 1-year anniversary episode. I want to do a few shout outs to those of you out in the audience. You guys were talking up a storm today. I'm so glad to hear it. I hope you guys got to know each other, maybe made some new friends. Let's see, we had Joey Brown out there. Hey, Joey, it looks like Roy hopped on after he got off. So thanks for joining us, Roy. We have Sabrina Weatherspoon. We've got Mark Weatherspoon. And we've got Bridget Gappa up there. I want to say thank you all. Who else did we have? Oh, we had Deja Wirtz joining us this evening as well. If I have not called your name, it's because I don't see you and I didn't know you were out there, but that doesn't mean I don't love you just as much as everybody else. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And that's my sign off. If anyone else would like to say goodbye.
Yeah, we also had Josie, who managed to jump on at least for a little bit, so that was wonderful. We love all of our audience and all of our guests. This has been a wonderful first anniversary show.
Thanks all. It's our anniversary. We will, on that note, see y'all next month.
Yes, we
new
will.
guests, new flavors, new imaginings, and new projects to discuss. So,
Yes. Remember, y'all, first Sunday of the month, unless there's something crazy going on that Sunday, then it's the second Sunday of the month. First Sunday of every month at 6 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel, Beyond the Ghostlight, your favorite art talk. Take care, guys.